Hello, my name is Michael Randolph, and I'm with the West Tampa Community Development Corporation. The video you're about to watch is a video of best practices from around the nation on how to reduce the level of street violence. This video is taken from organizations that are doing initiatives in some of the most violent neighborhoods in the country. Our initiative borrows from these initiatives to create the West Tampa Violent Intervention Strategy. The Violent Intervention Strategy is part of our overall general strategy towards reducing crime. This strategy specifically talks about street violence and how to reduce the number of killings in the neighborhood. So sit back, gonna be a lot of good information, and I'll see you at the other end of the video.
We're standing on the corner of 66 and Bishop Street in the city of Chicago, you know. Growing up here, it's basically just trying to survive and stay alive, man. This situation that happened in my community, you know, on my block, a couple of guys pulled a couple of pistols on me and my buddy. I wanted to come back and retaliate with a gun, but one of the members of Ceasefire helped me resolve my situation without violence. Probably saved my life and another life, you know.
We're on our way to where an actual shooting took place. Retaliation can happen in the first 24 hours. Once it's out there like that, then it spreads like a virus. When we're doing a violence interruption, we go straight there, talk about who's doing the shooting, why did he shoot you, and then can we stop it? Can we do it? What can we do to stop it? And when someone tell me it ain't gonna stop, in the back of my mind, I'm trying to think of somebody who got a lot of influence over this guy. Maybe mother, uncle, father. Contact that person and say, "Hey man, I talked to your nephew. He's hot and he's planning on doing. Could you calm him down? Could you talk to him?" We work with Ceasefire. You know.
You came over and said you're gonna shoot her daughter in the face.
What hospital he go to?
As physicians, you saw people, when we broke news, would just get up and walk out, basically emotionless. And that was the most chilling thing of all, I think, you know, that you were watching basically the beginning of a retaliation. If you didn't do something right then and there, it was going to be too late. When a trauma patient comes in, Ceasefire will be called, very much like I'm called when there's a gunshot wound. They would speak with the patient, to the family, and they're putting as many hours as I am.
Children shooting other children. The United States has a particular problem with this violence. I spent 10 years with the World Health Organization working on infectious diseases. Violence behaves like an infectious disease in every single way. The Ceasefire program, we are applying exactly the methods for control of infectious diseases with what we call violence interrupters and outreach workers. And what they do is they interrupt transmission and shift norms.
All right, hospital response, Charles.
One guy got killed, and we had another guy get killed. The retaliation.
Yeah.
I talked to the group on the south side. Marnell talked to the group on the north side of the street. Both of y'all got a body. Let's stop it before it escalates. And there ain't been no escalation.
Oh, that's good.
When they're out here, abnormal behavior becomes normal behavior. A guy think it's normal to step over a dead body and feel nothing about it. He think it's normal. I'm an outreach worker. I'm on call 24/24.
safer, you probably wouldn't think of turning to the criminals who once ruled them, but that's what the Baltimore City Health Department is doing with its Safe Streets program.
Yeah, it hires former offenders to walk the streets interrupting violence. And for the first time, and without a police escort,
ABC2 News investigators are the first TV news organization trusted enough to go inside the program for a night on their streets. ABC2 News investigator Brian Kubler takes you where no cameras have ever been before.
Baltimore is infected. If violent crime is a disease, then after years of a steady remission, it's starting to relapse. But deep inside some of the city's most important arteries, much like a vaccine, old pathogens of violence are working to inoculate the very disease they once helped create.
Just pay attention to the areas where you see the assaults happening.
This is Safe Streets of Park Heights, one of 4 chapters around the city run by the Baltimore City Health Department. In short, Safe Streets is a public health model aimed at curing violence as if it's a disease.
No, sure.
ABC2 is the very first media organization trusted to go inside this program at the street level, spending hours on a typical canvas walking these streets with the men who once ruled them. Reformed now as outreach workers and so-called violence interrupters to spread a different message to the high-risk youth following their old path.
But what makes them listen to you? Because I come from these streets. I grew up here. This where I'm from. I'm stopping another black brother from getting hurt. Another black brother from not going to jail. There's so many ways to throw away your life out here. I'm just trying to stop that. Just trying to show them there's a different way.
Showing them a different way from the normal these incredibly tough streets have taught them. And walking through their small part of Lower Park Heights on a Thursday night, it didn't take long to see.
What people don't understand is like all of this can become a street. That's right. Just from them just standing there.
And while we were conducting this interview, it nearly did. In the background of our shot, you can see a Safe Streets outreach worker escorting a young man away from a conflict brewing on the corner. We agreed not to broadcast specifics, but just off camera, Aaron, the violence interrupter, was interrupting with a simple message to just walk away, challenging their instinct for violence, a way of life handed down over generations on these streets. A lesson many watching this may think is obvious, but the code of these streets is an altogether different reality.
If we weren't right there, something definitely would have happened. So if we hang in a spot where something liable to happen, they know we standing there for something not to happen.
Safe Streets data shows 96% of their mediations in Park Heights were, quote, likely or very likely to result in gun violence. And the reason why they don't has everything to do with who these men are. They are Safe Streets' credible messengers. These men have not been saints, each with extensive records, some violent, each from these very same streets from a different time in their lives.
we got love for the community, we got love for the hood. That's why we do what we do.
Imhotep, the oldest and supervisor, learned to walk with a limp, once paralyzed by a bullet in one of the very same corner stores we visited this night. Other transgressions carry their own street cred, immortalized in one of the most critically acclaimed shows about Baltimore's code of these streets. That's a big part of this, right?
Major part.
And you are a Barksdale of the Barksdales of The Wire, correct? I mean, that's a real thing.
Yes,
Your cousin was the character.
Yeah,
right?
Avon is definitely.
And you're his cousin.
Yeah.
So you know the life that you're trying to get these guys out of.
Exactly. I can identify with it.
And that's the credibility you guys drive from,
Exactly.
correct?
Exactly. You need steel to sharpen steel.
But the pen, as it most always does, may still prove mightier. The Safe Streets Project is backed by data but maintains absolutely no relationship with police. This work is done within the code of the streets, and none of what they do is shared with law enforcement. Each outreach worker has a caseload of up to 20 participants or high-risk youth they've identified as catalysts for the violence in the area.
initiative in Louisville is being credited for helping to reduce crime in the city. Community Violence Intervention reaches out to people at the highest risk of committing or being victimized by violence. WLKY's Manash Kawari shows us how the program works and could be expanded.
As long as my kids have a roof over their head and food in the house, I'm okay.
It's what Mercedes Scott calls the bare minimum, something she has no problem providing now, but that wasn't always the case.
No, I didn't ever get in trouble, but I did go through a domestic violence.
A domestic violence situation that ultimately led to her life being threatened.
Where I had to find me another place to stay so I wouldn't, I wouldn't be in no more danger.
A situation that far too many times would have gone overlooked. But not anymore. Using federal funds, Metro's Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods introduced community violence intervention.
It's a sort of a public health approach, which really believes that violence is really transmitted through, a network of individuals.
Individuals who Paul Callanan, the Assistant Director of the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods, says are at the highest risk of committing or being victim to a crime.
And the idea is if we can reach out to these individuals and intervene, whether it's mitigating violence, mitigating conflicts between groups, offering services to individuals that are involved in violence, we can stop that transmission and thus reduce violence.
And Callanan says programs like this have helped reduce crime overall in the city, including a nearly 40% reduction in the number of shootings so far this year over the same time period last year. Now he says they're looking to expand. They're looking for businesses in West Louisville to partner with to serve as a site where the interventions can take place.
We currently have 2 sites that are in place right now. And we're expanding to additional 4. We just released an RFA for that.
Callanan says the goal is to expand the program to all of the neighborhoods that are at high risk. But they need the businesses in those areas to also want to make a change.
It's a rewarding effort. It's a way to have a direct impact on the violence in your community.
If you are a West Louisville business owner and are interested, the application process is open from now until June 17th. Reporting in Louisville, Manash Kawari, WLKY News.
Thank you, Manash. The 4 businesses that are chosen to be intervention sites will be receiving $450,000 to implement that program. The target areas are Shawnee, Russell, California, Park Hill, Parkland, Park Duval, Chickasaw, and Newburgh.
The city of Charleston is taking on the issue of gun violence, and now the medical university is hoping to combat repeat offenders and the spike in gunshot victims. News 2's Kate Prestag joins us live from MUSC, and this is an idea being welcomed by police and doctors, Kate.
Yeah, Brennan, right now, gun violence, the leading cause of death for children in our state, and MUSC officials say we are also dealing with it here in the city of Charleston.
The issue seen on the peninsula just last week.
We had 5 victims show up at the same time. 1 died. They were all young people in their teens and in their 20s.
Dr. Ashley Hank with the Medical University of South Carolina says this is when the hospital and community violence prevention and intervention program comes in. A team of men serving as advocates for those impacted by gun violence.
They work alongside of other community groups. They were alongside of our police right in the trauma bay when they showed up the other day.
It's a program Dr. Hank is hoping to get more funding for through the city of North Charleston and the city of Charleston to ensure those who end up in the hospital don't end up back in a cycle of violence.
For 75% of the patients we serve are from Charleston and North Charleston. About 34% are from North Charleston, and more than that are from the Charleston area.
Mayor Tecklenburg says it's a crisis, and the city already has programs in place to mentor and influence youth.
16, 18-year-old kids, if you will, unfortunately are at the point where they are as hardened as you can imagine.
The Charleston Police Department says there are 4 more programs as it helps their investigations and the community.
We can't do it all.
The Deputy Chief of Investigations says while they also have community programs through CPD, they welcome agencies who are not law enforcement.
People still,
can have a wall between law enforcement and the community. So other groups that can be an intermediary and be that point of contact, and if they can turn one young person's life around, then that's a win for all of us.
Those with MUSC say that they are expected to get a presentation at the next city council meeting to acquire funds through the American Rescue Plan. We're now live in downtown Charleston. I'm Kate Prestak, Channel 2.
Initiative is coming to Raleigh. It's called the Community Violence Intervention Program and was introduced by Raleigh's top cop yesterday. CBS 17's Brea Hollingsworth is live in Raleigh with more on what leaders are planning to do. Brea.
Yeah, this program is a collaboration of several organizations that provide support for people at risk of violence. The president of the Raleigh Apex chapter of the NAACP told me that this is personal. He's lost multiple family members to violence. From Uvalde to Highland Park, gun violence is happening both nationally and locally.
I think people are on edge coming out of a pandemic. I think we have mental health issues that are also contributing to that.
The Raleigh Police Department, NAACP, and other organizations working to figure out ways to curb gun violence in the community through the Community Violence Intervention Program. The program aimed to support and identify people at risk of violence. Raleigh Apex NAACP President Gerald Given Jr. says the program is broken down into 4 different parts: violence intervention, cognitive behavior therapy, survivor support services, and ecological systems.
And that first phase, violence intervention, it pretty much deals with the boots on the ground and a hospital violence intervention program.
Given says the program would be similar to Durham's Bull City United, where violence interrupters and outreach workers would act as mediators in troubled communities.
We're going to have people who are familiar and who've experienced gun violence, and there'll be case managers that'll work at a hospital. And then we'll have some folks that will pay to be inside the communities, have their ear to the ground, and be there to negotiate the ceasefires and prevent gun violence in the community.
Now, the president of the Raleigh Apex NAACP says they are currently in the early phases of the project. They say they are currently developing a gun violence prevention exploration team that would gather input from different cities that have reduced gun violence by 30% or more. He says he hopes to have the program up and running by January. In Raleigh, Brea Hollingsworth, CBS 17 News.
Now at 6 o'clock, breaking the cycle of violence in the capital city with the help of some hospitals.
For the first time ever, all 3 hospitals in Hartford are working together to assist victims of gun violence with necessary resources.
Channel 3 Hartford Bureau Chief Aya Galal has more right now on a new intervention program.
In 2002, I lost my son, Rainey, to gun violence, so I know firsthand the trauma and all the things that parents go through when they lose a loved one.
It's an unprecedented collaboration in the city of Hartford. St. Francis Hospital, Connecticut Children's, and Hartford Hospital coming together to form a new hospital-based violence intervention program.
And this matters so much because we know that one of the greatest tragedies of the epidemic of gun violence is that those whose lives are touched by gun violence are often touched by gun violence again and again.
The program will connect victims of gun violence to resources and support systems long after their physical wounds heal. The collaboration includes Hartford's 3 hospitals, as well as community partners like Mothers United Against Violence, Hartford Communities That Care, and Compass Youth Collaborative.
Violence is a multifaceted issue, has many different prongs, and so therefore we have to take many different angles and come together in order to support this work.
Through the program, hospital staff trained in violence intervention will coordinate long-term case management with gun violence victims. Specialists will also connect patients with mentoring, home visits, and provide family engagement and peer supports.
Quite frankly, this is where we need to be at as a city.
The program is built off of St. Francis Hospital's Violence Intervention Program, which has served nearly 1,900 victims and families of gun violence since 2004. The city is committing $2 million to the initiative, which begins this summer. In Hartford, Aya Galal, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
I'm Gary. I'm Daryl. And I'm James. And together we're the Community Violence Intervention Program Team. Or better yet known as the CVIP team. Here at MedStar Washington Hospital Center, I work with the Community Violence Intervention Program, and we are responsible for seeing all the patients that come in the hospital for any type of community-based violence, gunshots, stabbings, and assaults. And we help those patients with resources within the community. We try to help them find jobs. We try to make sure they make it back and forth to their doctor's appointments. We try to help them with interview clothes and different things, like a really, really hands-on case management part, so that we could try to help stop the recidivism of the injuries within the community. I got involved with this line of work through Gary and talking to Gary and learning the type of work that he did. And we had a connection that we built through playing football together. So we both grew up in some of the same areas. So we experienced a lot of different things outside of our everyday homes, like out on the street and stuff like that. I was learned of this position through Gary, Gary and I worked together at the nonprofit organization Collaborative Solutions for Communities. There we both was violent intervention specialists on the ground. Here at MedStar Washington Hospital Center, I am a community treatment navigator. We follow victims and survivors of violence, any community-based violence, gunshot stabbings or assaults, and we provide community outreach resources and wraparound support for them and help them navigate their everyday life barriers to the next level. My position is the violence intervention specialist. I'm basically like the first point of contact, basically bringing them comfortability and showing them that we can relate to them and we're here for them and we're not just another doctor or another nurse that's coming in to give them some type of medical treatment, whether it's taking them to surgery or sticking them with another needle. Just showing them someone that's here for them and letting them know outside of their family, we're here to help them, here to support them, and they're not going through this alone while they're here in the hospital. We have had instances where we have had guys who tell us they don't want to talk initially when we first come into the room. However, with us being consistent and going each day to check on them while they're inside the hospital, it gives them a sense of hope, and to see like people that's checking on them come from the community that they come from, or they can relate to some of the social issues that they have within the community. I think that opens up the door for them. And then we also tell them that, you know, we regular humans just like you. You know what I'm saying? We come from the same background as some of y'all. So we try to give them that piece of hope and that little bit of push to say, come on, we can help you get over this hump, because change can be scary and a lot of guys don't want to accept the change. However, we also tell a lot of guys, like, you know, a lot of people aren't able to overcome some of the injuries that some of these guys overcome. And by them overcoming some of the injuries, you ask them what they're going to do next, because it's a blessing that you're able to walk out of here.
Stop the shooting, stop the killing. Hey, how you doing, man? You know, I've been to more funerals than I have graduations. I can't even count the number of funerals that I've been to.
In 2016, Chicago saw some of the worst violence it's seen in the last 20 years.
Look at a bullet hole. Look at a bullet hole.
Since the start of 2016, more than 4,100 people in Chicago have been shot and more than 700 have been killed. Do you remember what that was like 20 years ago?
Yeah, it wasn't this bad. It wasn't this bad.
Really?
No, I don't think it's never been like this. Everybody getting shot now, old ladies, babies.
Pastor Brooks said 4-year-old Kayvon Collins was shot in the face.
Old men, you know, everybody.
To really provide a service and help people in the community understand and be able to process trauma. This is my 20th year as a physician, and growing up in Brooklyn and treating patients in New York City as well as in Chicago, we saw this common theme of violence. And taking it up another notch, this other thing, which is recurrent violence. And when you start looking at people coming in with medical problems and you see a pattern of recurrence, you start to ask yourself why. Why aren't we doing something more specifically to just eradicate its existence? And I don't know if I talked to Yosef about it. We're seeing a lot more older people coming in who were assaulted.
do the initial contact here at Kings County Hospital. We get a trauma code that comes through, a level 1. I go and meet the patient by the bedside. I usually, read off the body language, versus communicating, because every time I go in there and say, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? We can easily get oh, I'm fine, I'm okay, versus your body language is telling me that you're really not okay. So I just try to, give them the time to breathe, pause, introduce myself, let them know what I'm here to do.
My role like Calvi is I'm a violence intervention specialist. I started in January. What we do basically at Calvi, we deal with the patients that come in with gunshot wounds, stab wounds, and assault victims. We advocate for them, we talk to them. They might not feel safe in their neighborhood anymore. They might need housing. They might need an emergency transfer. So we help them with that. We help them with transportation. We help them with wraparound services.
So how was your first day?
My first day, I think it went well. But he said he never seen a person a day in his life, and it happened on his block. So he don't really even know too much about the person. So I don't feel it'll be a retaliation or nothing like that.
I go in there, I don't sugarcoat it. I just be me, even just by saying, hello, are you okay? Those words go a long way. And, our patients look for that. They look for just someone coming in there and speaking to them and letting them know that, everything will be okay.
For some reason, the ambulance got there, immediately. I remember telling them to take my sneakers off so they wouldn't get too much blood on them. I had a good pair of jeans on. I knew they were going to cut those. I believe once they started cutting the jeans, I just blacked out after that. By the time I made it to the hospital, it was actually Christmas. It was after 12. There were no surgeons available that day, I believe. So I had surgery on the 26th, early in the morning, first thing in the morning. Kings County got me into surgery. But before the surgery, they drilled 2 holes in my knee, and they put a rod in there, and then they put a weight system on the end of the rod to pull the bones down to keep it in place, which was excruciating pain. There was one bullet that went in about right here and came out with my upper thigh. But in this passage, it destroyed everything there. But when they explained to me the damage and I seen the x-ray, I was shocked. I was in awe, because to know that that's your bone that was once like this and now is like that, it's something that is unfathomable. You can't even describe it, really.
Yeah, I can definitely reach out to them when I give them a call. Okay. So funny, because when I actually went to go visit Derek was kind of skeptical on, speaking, because, we coming in, we're like, who is these people?
My sister Taisha, my first memory of her is she comes in with her suit, her uniform. I don't know if it was the morphine or what. I thought she was the cops. And I was just like, listen, I spoke to y'all already.
I went back to visit Derek again the next day, and, I tried to be consistent during the time that he was here, so he know that I'm for real, and it ain't a game. And then Derek started opening up. Then Derek started telling me his needs and his wants.
One thing I can say is the emotional support. They talk to you and check on you constantly, to the point that sometimes you're like, ah.
Yeah, that's the movement. We all we got, we all we need, so get used to us. 10 stacks, men black, bound together, one mission, take the city back. Each and every week we out here in these streets, and we ain't walking empty-handed. Let me speak. Spreading love in our community, we need that. Open inspiration for the hood we represent. Guaranteed employment plus training, yeah, we got that. Trying to kick a habit, need it big, yeah, we got that. We let's talk all action, so it's frontline. No more waiting on the handouts, it's grind time. Nothing beats a failure but a try. Say the young black men, that's that war crime.
World men look like in your city.
That's right. Come on. Yes.
Because one day, you will govern it.
Yes, Lord.
When we come, you will govern it.
Yes, He will.
I love you, little king.
Man, that's right. I love you, brother. I love you, brother.
We all we need.
I'm missing you. I'll find a way to get through.
Let's put together what they call the healing God. All those people that lost their life in violence,
means I can travel all over the state doing the piece work that I do without having to worry about breaking down. It means I can be blessing murder spaces around the city. It means I can be doing outreach.
Here out of Baltimore. It's called 360.
Anti-violence organizers had called on the city to stop the killing this weekend, and in the past 36 hours, it appears the killing has stopped. For the sixth time, organizers have dubbed this weekend Ceasefire Weekend. They launched these campaigns more than a year ago, and while not all of them have proven to be crime-free, organizers insist they are making progress.
I mean, sometimes you may not, when you look at it, it'll look a different way. But to us, if you live here all the time, you can start to see some of the changes that are happening.
So far, there have been no reported deadly shootings now in the past 36 hours.
This guy right here out of Baltimore, he was actually killed. Started the no-shoot zone. And he went around every place where a person was shot and created this artwork to say no shoot zone to make in reference to remember the person that was killed. He did it all over Baltimore. I think it was 2 prior to him being killed, shot multiple times. I think he did over 20 different, over 220 different areas in Baltimore City. So as you can see, around the country, they are doing things to reduce the level of violence. You've seen a brief preview of some of the organizations that we have looked at. There's another 15 different parts of the country that are doing similar ones, but we couldn't do them all. We'd be hours long in trying to do them. So what we did is to spotlight all of these initiatives and create the West Tampa Violent Intervention Initiative, in which we've kicked off in order to reduce the violence in the city of Tampa.